So, Jake, how are you today?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you, Jay.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to finally get you on the video conferencing recorded Ecotech Expert show.
So
So,
this is, you kept saying you want to do a video chat. I wasn't super sure what it was for, but I thought it might be related to the ecotech experts.
yeah, it's kind of using the using my industry connections to take our top level hobbyists and media friends. Actually, you're a member of the experts, even though you haven't been logging in much. Hint,
That's not
hint.
true. That's not true. I recently earned some points. I answered a couple questions.
Very nice. So I thought what would actually be an interesting place to start in terms of talking to you would actually be about how you came into this hobby and how we got involved with you way back in the day um, when we'd actually just launched the first Vortec pump.
Um, well, let's see. I started, like a lot of other people. I had a few fish bowls and stuff when I was a kid, and you go to the pet shop like, mommy, I want this one. And I'll never forget this. I think I was like 6 or 7, and we got a big fish bowl, and I picked out a small moor, a black moor goldfish, and my brother picked out a small koi, and the next day it was over. That was the end of like my first like aquarium memory. And then, you know, but it really started when I was 14. My mom came home with I want to say it was a 29-gallon tanker, and she brought three black moors and 3 white bale-tailed goldfish, and just immediately, we're feeding them too much, and then we're learning about the nitrogen cycle, and it was definitely, when you're a teenager, so until you have something that's part of your identity, you're kind of lost if you're looking for groups or things to do. And aquariums like really just kind of gripped me from that goldfish tank. I think within about 6 months, I had 20 aquariums throughout the house.
Wow.
And yeah.
Now was this in France or in the U.S.? Because you were
It was
born.
actually in South Carolina. I grew up in France, so that first story was in France. But it was in South Carolina where I first got that started. And those 20 tanks were all freshwater.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And so when did you make the transition from freshwater to saltwater and then become such a technical expert?
It was a long road from just being kind of a very enthusiastic hobbyist to really making it my life. But I remember one thing that's really interesting is I didn't set up one first saltwater tank for some reason. I don't remember exactly the reason. I think it was a good deal, not on Craigslist because it's before Craigslist. It was a local classified. I set up a 29-gallon and a 30-gallon long right next to each other, and I could just remember the air-driven Lee's internal protein skimmer and picking out my first piece of live rock and being upset with the staff that they weren't gentle enough with it, with the Aptasia on top, because I clearly picked out the rock with the Aptasia on top.
With the
That was got a free coral on it. And then, just it really was about working in the aquarium stores. Just definitely, I remember like pining for an acropore. I wanted to see a live acropore ever. And the first one I saw, I'm not sure if it was alive. At first they were so bony and small. And you're like, oh, what is that? Is it really real? It's hard to tell. But yeah, it was really just like working the aquarium stores, seeing the beginning of propagation and fragging, and the introduction of super glue as being completely non-toxic for aquariums. That really blew the lid open.
So when did that all occur? What are we talking about here, time frame wise?
In the mid-90s, it was really hard to find information, right? The internet wasn't what it is today. You're reading magazines and people were still talking about mini reefs, and there was only one way to keep a reef tank, and that was the Berlin method. But in the late 90s, we definitely had like an acceleration with some of the GeoCities chat groups. There was a Marine Fish Monthly, so we finally had a magazine that was just for us. And late 90s, early 2000s, things started accelerating. Just the saltwater hobby. One thing I do remember from my first early saltwater fish days is when you went to the aquarium store, you'd be lucky to find a store that was just aquariums, right? Usually you go to a pet shop and they might have an aquarium section. If they had an aquarium section, maybe they had one saltwater tank where they put everything in there. All the fish for sale, all the corals for sale, the anemones and the invertebrates. And if you saw someone else looking at it in a particular way, you're like, oh, you keep saltwater tanks too? And it was they're very, very small group. Yeah, it's a very small community.
Very cool. And then, so what was the first fish store you worked in?
And it was a chain store. It's a chain store that's still around in South Carolina. I don't think it was I think it was called, no, it was a precursor to that. But it was something like a chain store, a Super Pets. My mom worked in the aquarium section, and I would go in a couple days a week, and I wasn't paid, but that's where I learned how to bag fish. And, the craziest thing was getting a order of the fish from the master list, which we know now is super limited. But yeah, working in pet stores is really what got me started and learning a lot vicariously, right? Because you can't try out every product, you can't try out everything, but when you're at an aquarium store, you really can amplify your experiences through customers, because you tell them to do X, Y, Z, and they come back and tell you what worked and what didn't. And that's why, over time, you build up this big back catalog of vicarious experience, the retailers do, from trying all these things with other people's tanks.
Cool. And how did you end up at Reef Builders? I mean, it seems sort of natural now, right? But
yeah, well, you're jumping ahead quite a bit. But after that, I always worked in an aquarium store. I literally had 1 or 2 jobs in my life that weren't aquarium related. But I actually went to college for marine science, after working in aquarium stores and realizing that there was kind of a ceiling to that unless you wanted to be an owner. So I went to school for marine science and, learned to scuba dive, worked with spawning corals out in the wild a couple times. And it was not too long after college that I wanted to write, because my English professors, they really pushed me to be a better writer. And I'd always written a lot by wasting time on the forums, and I had this policy where I would get out from school and always be on Reef Central and checking out forums, but I had this thing where I'm like, I'm going to comment once a day. And so for 10 years, I had a once a day comment post count. I wasn't one of these guys having a million posts, but I always just tried writing one thoughtful thing. And so really exercised my writing skills and just the writing muscle. And so around 2007, 2008, Glassbox Design and Reef Builders were among some of the first blogs. And, I just remember looking at them like, I don't want to be a website operator, but I would love to share some of what I know, some of my personal experiences. And, literally just walked up to Ryan and said, hey, it was Atlanta Magna. He said, hey, I want to write for your website. And, I started writing and really was very prolific. That's how Reef Builders really started blowing up in about 2008, 2009.
Very cool. So I remember, what was it? It must have been probably about 2007, 2008 when you came to Bethlehem to do some flow testing.
I don't think that was my first trip, though. I don't think that was my first time at Bethlehem. I think I'd been there once before when they were in the old small house. I was driving through, and there was the old house right there in downtown.
Oh, okay, yeah, so back when it was, on like East 5th Street or East 4th Street, right down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's.
I remember Pat showing me this feature with your first wireless controller, and a single controller would sync up 16 other controllers, and he showed me all these crazy modes. And at the time, I had already done some of my float work in college, and I remember thinking about it. I'm just like, Pat, this is really technical, but I have no idea what you would do with it. I remember I was like, I don't know. I don't even know what I would do with this. At the time, the technology was limited. It made it a lot harder to make 16 different pumps dance.
Cool. And, and then from there, I remember at the time you were regarded as the father of flow or something along those lines in the hobby.
I wouldn't go that far, but Sanjay and Dana Riddle, they were doing a lot of work on light. So when I was in college, I'm like, I'm not going to study light, Sanjay's doing super great work, and so is Dana. And I was like, flow is really, really underrepresented in the aquarium hobby. And I had a professor who had some experience with water flow and like microalgae and certain types of corals. So yeah, then I jumped into that and really went into the deep end of water flow and understanding what it means. And, at the time, there was a huge emphasis on random, chaotic, turbulent water flow. But the turbulence doesn't it doesn't have to happen on a super wide scale, right? It really, the only place you care about turbulence is right next to the coral at the millimeter scale, because that's what increases the gas exchange. And so at the time, we didn't have propeller pumps. You guys were just like a glimmer in our eye on the horizon. And so before that, I was just trying to figure out how to get more water movement in our aquariums using the devices that we had, which was mostly power heads. And I figured out that if we get them working together, we could create what I call mass water movement. Get all the water in the tank moving together. And I was going to school for marine science at the time, and I was learning about ocean gyres. I was like, yeah, I think we can call these gyres. But I remember, describing the flow as a gyre for 2 years before I actually wrote it up in an article. It was a 5-piece article for Advanced Aquarists. And that's definitely what kind of kicked off the gyre flow that we know today.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And now you've kind of, as I believe we all are in the industry and the hobby, making the jump to videographer, correct? And and video blog host.
Yeah, it's a steep learning curve, and you have to be really motivated to do it, as you know. But for me, it's a couple things. Obviously, it's a natural progression of being a writer and a photographer. Taking pictures of aquariums for me goes hand in hand with enjoying aquariums, because so few people can make it over to your house. You can make it over to so few other people's houses. Because you're not taking your tank to the tank meet like you would with cars or something. So photography has been an integral aspect of the aquarium hobby. In the early days of the forums, there was 3 big platforms. It was Reefland, it was Reefs.org, and it was Reef Central. And they were on par with their traffic. And so some of the more tech-savvy, they knew how to upload their own pictures and insert them into posts.
Mm-hmm.
But the only reason Reef Central pulled ahead and by a long shot is when they added the image attachment feature, which made it really easy to share pictures of your tank on the blog. So yeah, that's what propelled Reef Central to dominate that space for as long as it did.
That's very interesting. It's a very good point. That obviously it's such a visual hobby. We take that for granted, and we all have so much pride in our ability to be proprietors of our aquarium. But there's really no way to share that other than with an image or a video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very.
And I have taken so many pictures over time, hundreds of thousands of. Most of my cameras will shoot about 100,000 pictures before I upgrade. Not kidding. And I just got tired. Just kind of got tired of taking pictures. There's very few things now that I want to have that perfect photograph. And so yeah, the video is just a new way to tell stories, to share stories and ideas along my travels.
And hopefully we'll get to see some of those travels. I think you just got back from Florida, right?
Yeah, I definitely have a backlog of content from my trips to Papua New Guinea and Palau, although I didn't put out everything on Australia, so I got that completely covered. And then I just went to, it's a certain amount of work to travel and to collect the video files and the content and to capture that. And it's a whole nother motivation to sit down in front of the computer and crank to edit that material. It's just, there's no way around it. It's just time. So you can shoot for editing, like knowing how you're gonna edit something. But yeah, there's just no way to get around it. It is time. It takes a lot of time.
I know that. So yeah. Anyway, I think that's probably a great place to start. I wanted to really share how we've worked together in some capacity here and there over the years, and hopefully be able to check in with you here and there over the next couple of months in terms of what you're working on.
The one thing that we didn't cover is how we got to meet.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah.
yeah, I think it was my second Magna outside of DC. Would have been 2004 or 2005, and yeah, I remember it was definitely Pat was there. I think Justin was there, probably Tim. Yeah, those three. And I remember seeing my first Vortec pump and just thinking, at the time I was studying flow and I was super excited. I remember doing the exact same thing everybody else did. Quickly went and grabbed the motor, thinking I could move it around like a magnet, properly, disassemble the thing. It's like, oh. And, back then I was privy to a lot of information from Pat, and he told me, oh yeah, one day we're going to make them wireless because we had these metal boxes that had been hand soldered in the first round. And it was just a hoop dream. It was a hoop dream to just have two pumps wirelessly communicating to each other. And I know I've told this story a lot of times, but I bought not one but two of the first beta pumps because I wanted spare parts for one pump because I thought for sure there's no way in the future people are going to pay $250 for this pump. Yeah. Now the rest is history. I make my lights dance, at the flick of a button, super fast, do all kinds of tricks. And now you got lights and return pumps and all kinds of crazy psychedelic features. So what's cool about Ecotech Green that they have developed on the promise that was made to some of the early adopters. So that's what's super cool.
Well, I think you and many of the people around at the early time, and even now, one of our biggest driving forces is input from the hobbyist community, and experts like yourself. So, I think that's.
What people don't realize is like this vision that you're materializing today. Those seeds were planted nearly 10 years ago, and yeah, it's not like you woke up a couple of years ago and you're like, oh, hey, we should do this. Yeah, you guys have a roadmap, and it's kind of like the Apple thing. You wait till the technology is mature and practical to implement to the aquarium world. So, this last 10, 12 years have been pretty amazing, and it's actually kind of hard to picture what the next 10 will be like.
I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Well, I think you're already privy to a lot of it anyway, but yeah, we're pretty excited about 2018, that's for sure.
Very nice.
Awesome, Jake. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time, and I'll check in with you again soon.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jay.